This episode of The Bryant Rose Show, an exclusive interview with former Florida State fullback James Coleman on the DeAndre Francois situation and the current state of the FSU program. Also, Super Bowl talk, what happened, my reactions, and yes, a 28-hour saga, my signing day story, right here on the Bryant Rose Show. Stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in the second edition of the Bryant Rose Show. I'm gonna kick off here with the news coming out of Tallahassee, the DeAndre Francois incident, dismissal, I should say, that occurred on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. For those that missed it, here's a quick little summary to speed things up for you. News came out that Francois, his former girlfriend, released an Instagram video. The contents of the Instagram video are as follows. Quote from the girlfriend, quote, "Stop hitting me in my beeping face." The audio from Francois, allegedly, quote, "I don't give a beep. I'm going to hit you in your face every beeping time." The message from the post from the alleged victim, quote, "I normally don't put my business on IG, but I am tired of my name being dragged through the mud since the beginning. I have been silent." This coming from Sports Illustrated. "For 2 years, I have been in a domestic situation with DeAndre Francois. I thought I loved him and thought he could change for the better, but it has gotten worse. I lost my first child because of all of the beating, and I suffer from postpartum depression. This situation is taking a toll on my life. Yes, I stayed after that because I was stupid and blinded by love." Close quote. That is where we lay our scene, and that is where it got started. From there, I had a very good conversation with James Coleman. Here is that exclusive interview done just earlier today. Here it is, right now. Alright, so on today's show, we are very fortunate to have three-time ACC championship winner, the guy that Bobby Bowden counted on 3rd and short, 4th and short. Mr. Coleman, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Anything on this side of the earth, better than one this not. So I'll be alright.
All right. So the news broke this weekend that DeAndre Francois, the former Florida State quarterback, was dismissed. How did it all come into fruition?
Well, we remember about a year ago, DeAndre Francois was had police called out to his dorm room because of an altercation between him and his girlfriend at the time, Diamond. Since then, he's also had a incident where he was allegedly considered someone who was doing drug trafficking. All these things were proven to be false allegations. There's a lot of smoke, and a lot of smoke that you don't want surrounding your starting quarterback. So moving forward from there, you have a pretty crappy season, but one that you can see was noted with distractions from the team that was split. DeAndre stayed with Diamond and some of the people they probably should have got rid of. And at the end of the season, there was tons of talk about Francois possibly entering the NFL draft because he's said to have the tools, but not necessarily the tape. So he figured he could probably get drafted. But then there was also talk that he might transfer. Diamond and Francois continue to have a tumultuous relationship where she essentially put on her Facebook page and on social media sites, including tagging people like myself, about an argument or disagreement that her and DeAndre had that was pretty heated from a word standpoint. We don't know who hit who or what was done, but she pretty much put it out there. And even though DeAndre Francois has never been officially charged with anything, it's the amount of smoke and the perception surrounding the program, with most notably being your starting quarterback, who was probably the most recognized player on your team. They just had to make it.
So you talked about some smoke surrounding the program. What was the initial reaction when this news broke out?
Well, FSU knew about this tape, from what my sources say. The problem is that, and with many domestic violence cases or any kind of abuse situation, is that you typically see the accuser and the accused still be around each other. So one week she's saying she has a tape saying you guys got to do something. The next minute you see them at recess or some kind of local club around Tallahassee. So it's hard to gauge. It wasn't necessarily a Florida State football program problem as much as it was a domestic dispute and that she should have went through the proper channels. But right now, what she claims, as in 48 hours after, that she was just doing something for attention. Well, she got the attention. She got it. She got what she, I guess, what the initial consequences were that she wanted, and now DeAndre Francois is no longer on the team.
You mentioned in there that there are some mixed reports about the social media postings of the alleged victim. In terms of the reaction from Willie Taggart dismissing Francois without a conviction or indictment, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was told by someone at the combine when I went that football is an opportunity, not a career. So you don't have to. DeAndre Francois didn't lose anything. He didn't lose his freedom. He didn't lose anything. He just lost his opportunity at Florida State. Someone very well may pick him up from a smaller program. And the reality of the situation is this, is that DeAndre Francois was not going to be on this football program in the fall. DeAndre Francois was supposed to graduate in December. Had DeAndre Francois done what he was supposed to do, this situation probably would not have ever happened. That being said, had Willie Taggart made a concrete decision when he understood that there was a wavering faith whether DeAndre Francois was coming back or not, Taggart should have went on ahead and said, no, there is no, you make the choice. I run this football team, and you will either be on it or you will not be. And Taggart didn't do that, but now his hand was forced. And I will say, even though I believe had he made this decision in December, he wouldn't have as much of a headache as it is right now, even though it's still minor. But what he did was swift and decisive and kind of necessary, based on the information that he had then, and you cannot backtrack.
So during the season, you know that this season did not live up to expectations for the Florida State faithful. Taggart received some criticism from the faithful in terms of his discipline, in terms of the environment and the culture at the program. Do you think that the handling of this situation may have won over some of those fans that were not satisfied with that first year in the Taggart tenure?
No, and I'm going to be honest with you. The biggest situation is domestic violence. Me, especially being somebody who grew up in a household that was like that. But fans only care when it's in their face. If FSU was 10-2 or were one game away from making the playoffs and just losing the Clemson, nobody would care about the situation. But the reality is that it's only a distraction because we had our first losing season in over 40 years. If the only way that, and then with recruiting being the way it is, the potential that now he may go 2 cycles with outside of the quarterback, puts Tag in a situation where he's got to come out blazing, not only with the 2020 recruiting class, he's got to put pressure to make sure he amounts for a really good class for 2020, but he's got to come out the season smoking. He's got to make sure that Boise State, they look like a well-oiled machine. The reason why we have the quarterback room right now is based on the decisions that he made as a coach. Now, he wasn't given much. The stats are out that since 2013, literally the only quarterback that is left is James Blackman. Everybody else either, only a couple actually graduated. I think 3 graduated. Everybody else was either kicked off the team or transferred. Since 2015, you've got 53% of the blue chip prospects left. That's blue chip. That's the 4- and 5-star prospects. So you have very little talent that was here. There was a lot being said of the top 5 classes that Jimbo Fisher brought in, but not a lot being said about Jimbo's retention rate. And Taggart has an uphill battle, not just with the fans, but with the administration. There's this thing called APR that most fans have no clue about because they really don't care, and that's the graduation rate of your athlete. Jimbo did a terrible job of making sure guys graduate, and Taggart literally has to almost make these next 2 to 3 classes graduate in the totality, or FSU will be facing sanctions based upon academic ranking. So there's a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, FSU is a very fine sports car. It's just got an engine messed up. So Taggart's got to do a lot of things that are behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And I will say this, though the burden was high, he has not really done himself any favors.
Do you think the absence now of Francois could potentially open the door for a new recruit to perhaps change his mind and look at Florida State as a potential new home, or do you think this incident doesn't have a whole lot of impact in that regard?
It doesn't have a lot of impact on this 2019 class. You may be able to get another graduate transfer in King from Houston, who was a quarterback for Clements. You may be able to get Josh Jackson from Virginia Tech. But really, this is James Blackman's team. And there's actually a really talented walk-on in McDonald, who was actually a 3-star quarterback in the 2018 recruiting class to Air Force. He transferred to Florida State because his brother is Cam McDonald. And then you got Jordan Travis, but Jordan Travis won't be able to play until next year. So there's some moves. They could still get Lance with injury if he signs on tomorrow. And Florida State's recruiting room, their quarterback room would be similar to what it was going to be without that. Again, DeAndre Francois was not going to be on this 2019 FSU list.
I have a lot of Florida State fans watching and listening. How would you describe the skill set of the McDonald kid that you mentioned?
I think he's very explosive. I don't really know his arm strength, but I know as far as running the zone read, he's a home run threat. He's a guy who actually knows how to run it. As Frenchie didn't really run it very well. Whereas Blackman is more of a command guy. He's a willing runner, better, more powerful arm. This kid can a little shorter, got a little bit more wiggle, and has adequate arm strength. But the thing is, with any program, when you're down to your second string, when you lose your first string quarterback, you're typically out of playoff contention.
So back when I was playing college football, and I know you're older than me, the process of going through a transfer portal did not exist. In terms of Francois looking for new options, how does that process go about? And is there any news of him finding a potential suitor?
He's got to go through. He's probably going to go Division I AA. If I'm being 100% honest, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work out the way he thinks it's going to work out. But I also don't believe that. I believe that was about his height, no matter what. So, the process is you go in, you make it known that you're no longer coming back, and because he's still a student at Florida State University, he's just not coming back for the 2019 season. He's still a member of FSU's 2018 team, so he still has he still has up until May, really July, to finish out his college career as far as academic wise goes. But but you pretty much enter that portal and everybody gets you. But I don't I don't see the doors being beat down for him like it was for others.
So do you feel like this incident, whether guilty or innocent, really takes away any opportunity of him transferring to a marquee program?
Yes. Nobody wants to touch you. Why would you put yourself in a situation where you're with the quarterback who has a history of showing improper character?
You talked about his history. What do you think, now that it's over, is the legacy of DeAndre Francois during his Florida State tenure as a quarterback?
It was one of many guys who played at Florida State. I mean, I think a lot of this stuff, it's sad in the 24-hour news cycle. And there's no indictment on you or any of us, but these things happen. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it right. It play out probably a little bit too fast in the media. But I've seen many situations like this turn out exactly like what this just turned out. The young lady recant her statement just like she did before. And you really don't know if something really happened or something didn't happen. But too often, young men's careers get tarnished, and even if it turns out that it wasn't true, nobody really goes and writes or covers the process of exalting them or what is it, the right word? Nobody goes back and talks about the good or what happened in the same manner in which you besmirched their name. It's a very good quote from the Godfather that I really love. Godfather 2, Michael Coleman was in front of the Senate panel, and they had no charges on him. He wrote a statement essentially telling them, I hope you guys cover the fact that this Senate panel had no charges on me as much as you did by saying I was a criminal. So I think DeAndre Francois' career will be remembered for having a ton of talent and allowing things like his off the field, things like relationships, things he had control over, derail that. And a lot of it also had to do with his attitude. I think a lot of people don't like the way he carried himself more than they did. He's not a bad kid. I just think he's maybe a little too cocky.
Mr. Coleman, I really appreciate your time. For those listening that may not be aware of your fifth quarter website that you recently started up, could you maybe tell the viewers a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a new way to get information. In the 24-hour news cycle, in the 24-hour news cycle, a lot of people want to generate clicks. So you're going to see salacious headlines. You're going to see a lot of things get regurgitated and rewritten and that's no knock on the 247s or the rivals or anything like that. What we're trying to do at fifth quarter college football is give you up to the minute information in a format that everybody is used to, essentially the group chat. So we've got different channels when it comes to for our premium recruiting, premium FSU news, premium content. That's $5 a month. And then there's our regular content, which is our Garnet, where we have a weekly voice chat where we talk about the goings on in FSU football. And then some regular games, and then we have regular water cooler shop where people are just chewing the fat. All of our articles, for $1, you're able to see every one of our articles. The $5 premium site is really where what we call nuggets. That's where I drop my up to the minute, my most important information, what rumors are going on, what coaches are coming in, what recruits we're going after, what's going on in the locker room, and you get an opportunity to interact with former Florida State football players, which nobody else has. And you get to engage them in a manner in which is different than anything else. Again, it's a community, it's a family, and right now it's double the value, half the cost. So again, it's Fifth Quarter College Football. You can check us out on Patreon, or if you go to @FifthQuarterCFB on Twitter. We probably have the best customer service program out.
Folks, this was James Coleman, former Florida State fullback, insider, Also, the co-host of the Sports Den weeknights on Jack Sports Radio from 10 to 12 weeknights. Please listen in. A very informative and entertaining show. 92.5 FM, 1010XL in the Jacksonville area, and you can download the app. Also, please check out his fifth quarter website for information on Florida State football. Mr. Coleman, thank you very much for coming on today.
I appreciate it, Brian. Anytime.
All right, you're the man. Thank you very much.
All right, no problem.
All right, James Coleman, a 1010XL personality, as mentioned, and he talked about Florida State football. I'm going to tune in now on what happened Sunday night in the National Football League. Patriots-Rams, here, in my opinion, are some of the numbers that I think played a role. I'm sure most of you know what happened, but here's some interesting nuggets to take in. Plays, 68-60, pretty close. Yards, big advantage for the Patriots, 407 to the Rams 260. I get at the rushing totals, which I think was a very big factor in this game. Rushing for the Patriots, 154 yards. The Rams held down to 62. I told you that they would need Gurley in this one. In this particular game, Gurley only had 35 yards rushing on 10 carries. For the Patriots, also a key statistic, Brady only sacked one time, whereas the Rams, they were sacked a total of 4 for 31, a big one, a 14-yard loss. Kyle Van Noy, the guy I mentioned in the pregame YouTube video, episode 1. This took place 4:46 in the second quarter, 3rd and 2. New England was only up 3-0 at that point. You thought that the Rams, if they got something going there, if they scored, the momentum could tide. That was a big-time missed opportunity on that particular drive. In the red zone, there was only one red zone appearance in this game. It was that short touchdown run, or it ended on that short touchdown run by Sony Michel. The Rams were not in the red zone at all. You consider their other opportunities, driving down the field, the Cooks dropped pass. In my opinion, Goff should have been able to throw that earlier if he had a little more awareness, timing a little better. We could be talking about a touchdown, even though regardless, it may have been catchable anyway. You talk about the Gilmore interception that pretty much sealed it before that field goal at the end. Your MVP in this game, Julian Edelman, 10 receptions, 141 yards. Although in the grand scheme of things, the Patriots were not able to get deep into the Rams' territory very much. The turnovers, a lot of people thought this was a boring game. The turnovers, though, kept to a minimum, only one for each side. The Brady interception that, in my opinion, was an unnecessary play to begin with. The Patriots were running down the Rams' throat at will in that first drive, but in my opinion, a forced play call, a poor pass, and really a forced pass, very unnecessary on that Brady pick, and then the other turnover being that Goff interception earlier. You talk about the Rams passing the ball. Gurley, as mentioned before, was held to 35 yards rushing. So really the Rams caught into third down situations. They in general for the game, they only threw for 50%, which in today's NFL really does not get it done. And on third downs, they were 3 for 13. You compare that with the Patriots, 3 for 12, not that much different. But the Rams, you consider the failure to run the football effectively in combination with only completing 50% of their passes, you find yourself in third down situations, and the fact that they failed to convert really made this difficult for the Rams in general. And in this game in general, it was a tight one, low scoring at that, but a tight one. I think it got a bad rap in general. In terms of the entertainment value, in terms of the... No, I'm not talking about the halftime show. In terms of the actual quality of this game, you had Wade Phillips on the Rams side. You had Belichick, obviously, a defensive-minded head coach for the Patriots. So very experienced defensive minds. Keep in mind they had extra time to prepare, and really a close, competitive game that, in my opinion, was definitely taken for granted. It was close until the end, really until that last dagger, that the interception. I really didn't think the game was over per se until that interception thrown to Gilmore. So with that being said, this game in many ways was not ranked highly in terms of the quick reaction, but I'm here for you to keep the record straight. This game, in my opinion, a much better game than advertised, and I'm going to go through each of the 53 Super Bowls, or at least the 52 beforehand, in order to explain why this game, vastly underrated, and in no shape or form is this rightly even close to being the worst Super Bowl. Let me start with the first one, Green Bay and Kansas City, the first one. An interesting matchup, especially given the fact that it was the first time that this was done, and while some of the players maybe knew guys from college or, watched some film on them, you really had no idea what to expect, although Green Bay was favored. So Green Bay was up 14-10, so the Chiefs hung tough, but really the Packers pulled away in that one, 35-10 your final. So really not that close of a game when you consider the Packers' performance in that second half once they got going. So number one, not that close of a game. Super Bowl II, kind of similar more or less. Green Bay was up 16-7 at half though, and Adderley had that interception, 60-yard interception for a touchdown, but really at that point it was already over. It was 26-7 when that happened. So 1 and 2 already off the gate, not that competitive. Super Bowl III, the guarantee game, Joe Namath. In terms of the quality of the game, I wouldn't necessarily rank this in terms of quality of play very high. In terms of the historic significance, extremely high. When you consider it was the AFL's first victory, you consider the Joe Namath guarantee, but in terms of the actual game, I wouldn't call it a blowout, but Unitas coming in, sore elbow. He attempted to bring the team back, but in the grand scheme of things, not really a barn burner. He threw an interception late in the game that really kind of put them out of any shot at coming back really for good. The Jets won that matchup 16-7. The next one, Super Bowl IV, another victory for the Chiefs, or a victory for the Chiefs, I should say. Another victory for the American Football League. The Chiefs beating the Vikings 23-7. This game featured a long touchdown catch from Otis Taylor for the Vikings. Really, that Purple People Eaters defense really did not have a huge game. In terms of the Vikings, their lone bright spot, really, in general, in the grand scheme of things, Paul Krause had an interception in the game. But in terms of competing, in terms of winning this game, it came down to Kansas City just being better on the line of scrimmage. On the other side of things, the Vikings center, Tingelhoff, really had trouble with Buck Buchanan, a big old hoss in the middle, one of the greatest defensive tackles ever to play this game. So the Chiefs 23, Vikings 7, not that competitive. This next one was really the first competitive Super Bowl, but a very sloppy game to the point where it's actually been dubbed the Blunder Bowl. This was also the game where the Colts scored a touchdown on a Unitas pass that got tipped in the air, and John Mackey, who wasn't the intended receiver, came over, caught the tip pass, and ran it in for a touchdown in that Colts victory over the Cowboys, who for a long time were known as next year's winners. So I would consider that 16-13 affair the first real competitive Super Bowl. Super Bowl 6, the Cowboys routed the Dolphins 24-3, wasn't close. Next one, Super Bowl 7, Miami beat Washington. This was actually the year where the Dolphins completed their undefeated season. The 14-7 score really is kind of deceiving. The 7 that was put up by Washington was a blocked field goal with 2:07 left in the fourth quarter that got returned back to make it 14-7. But really, it was kind of a fluky play. And really, if you actually watch the game, Miami really won decisively. It wasn't really that close. So for me, I have that in sort of a kind of, but not really. And in the grand scheme of things, I'm not counting it under my close game category. My next one, Dolphins. I have the description as Dolphins ran over Vikings 24-7. Zonka was the MVP. Not much really else to really document there in terms of it being competitive. All right, Super Bowl 9. The Steelers beat the Vikings. This was a low-scoring affair. Pittsburgh found themselves up 2-0 at the half. This happened on a Fran Tarkenton pitch that was dropped, that Tarkenton ended up falling on in the end zone, and the Steelers ended up winning this game 16-7. I'll call it a kind of close game, but not a barn burner. But also a very, you probably would not consider it a high-quality game, although this marked really the Steelers, their first win of their dynasty. This next one, Super Bowl 10, often regarded as one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time. Steelers won 21-17. I have a check next to it. The following year, Oakland playing Minnesota. Oakland really took care of Minnesota on the line of scrimmage. They had Art Shell at left tackle, and they had Gene Upshaw at the left guard position, and they really beat Minnesota on the line of scrimmage. One of the few bright spots for Minnesota was a blocked punt, and Ray Guy is a guy that never got blocked, but Minnesota actually blocked one. Basically, Guy got jinxed early in the game. In general, a pretty decisive Oakland win. This next one, Super Bowl 12, a very sloppily played game. In terms of turnovers, in terms of mistakes, I would rank this one very high, but more or less not a close game. Cowboys 27, Denver 10. And that also happened to be Roger Staubach playing against former Cowboy quarterback playing for Denver. The next one, Super Bowl 13. This is also often considered by historians as one of the greatest Super Bowls ever. Pittsburgh, they built a lead, and Roger Staubach rallied the Cowboys, and they came just short of playing a comeback. Pittsburgh won 35-31. The next one, Pittsburgh beat the Rams, the Los Angeles Rams at the time, although they've gone back and forth, I guess, in St. Louis. They beat them 31-19, but I will say this, the score is actually not indicative. This one, I will say, was closer than the score indicates. I have a check mark next to it, close until the end. The Jack Lambert interception basically sealed it. They scored a touchdown after that, Franco Harris. So for that one, I have marked as a close one. The next one, Oakland, Philly. Oakland won 27-10. This was the Plunkett MVP year. Ron Jaworski, not so much. 3 interceptions. No check mark. Super Bowl the following year. 49ers Cincy. A 49ers lead 20-0 at one point. And then Cincy came back. 49ers ended up winning 26-21. I have a check mark on that. A great goal line stand led to the 49ers victory. The following year, Washington and Miami. This was during the strike season. Washington wins 166 rushing yards from John Riggins, including a famous 43-yard touchdown run. I have it as a close one, relatively speaking. The following year, Raiders 38, Redskins 9, not so close. You remember a Marcus Allen touchdown run was really the signature play in that game. Following year, 49ers 38, Miami 16. Dan Marino was in his second season, passed for over 5,000 yards, first one to do so. But in terms of this game, a one-sided affair, 49ers a comfortable victory in that one. The following year, the Bears, this was the 85 Bears, who were dominant in that season. Only loss came to Miami, and they absolutely whipped the New England Patriots 46-10. A very non-competitive, one-sided affair, and the only thing that the Chicago faithful might feel a little bit bad about could be the fact that Walter Payton never scored on one. The next one, Giants and the Broncos. The Broncos lost 39-20. Pretty decisive game. It was close at half. Denver was actually ahead 10-9 at the half, but really the Giants defensively dominated in that second half. This next one, Washington and Denver, and this might be the biggest trick of all the Super Bowls because John Elway threw an absolute beauty of a bomb early in this game. Denver gets ahead, and then Washington scores 35 points in the second quarter with only 18 plays worth of action there. So in 5 minutes and 47 seconds in the second quarter on 18 plays, Washington with Doug Williams at quarterback, they put up 35 points and ended up winning the game 42-10, a blowout. Now this next one was an epic 49ers win over Cincy. It is the game where Montana down 16-13. They need 92 yards to move down to the field. And this is the game where Montana, the clutch drive, and he eventually connects with John Taylor for a touchdown, the game winner. This one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time, a definite check mark. Rolling through this next one here. That is the game where the 49ers absolutely obliterated the Denver Broncos, 55-10. Not much else needed there. This next one after that was the Scott Norwood wide right. Bills lost to the Giants. A check mark for sure there. That was actually the 25th anniversary game. I have the program here at home. The one after that, Super Bowl 26, Washington beating Buffalo, the second of the 4 losses for Buffalo. Washington won 37-24. Redskins had a 17-0 lead at one point, and really controlled this game. The following year was the Leon Lett fumble game. This one a big blowout. The Cowboys won 52-17. I mentioned that one in the last program. That was also the Michael Jackson halftime show year. The following year, Dallas beat the Bills again. This was when Dallas was trailing, but really, if you ask me, the Bills, they had it in their heads, really played not to lose, and the Cowboys really just feasted on them in the second half, put up 24 unanswered to win 30-13. The next year, a blowout again. San Francisco, I beg your pardon. This was the Steve Young monkey off my back game. Threw 6 touchdown passes, and San Diego really got blown out. The following year, I would describe it as a closer game than the experts thought. Dallas with 2 Larry Brown interceptions being the difference. The first check mark there in the past 5 years. The following one, Green Bay. This is the Desmond Howard game. They beat New England, a fairly close game, but really they were up 2 scores for the bulk of the fourth quarter. So for me, that does not count. The next one, Denver beating Green Bay. This was the game where Terrell Davis had that big touchdown toward the end. I'm going to say it was close, relatively speaking. I'll give it to him for a competitive game. Now, here's where things kind of get interesting for me and where my point will shine in a few minutes. Alright, so you talk about the Denver 34-19 decisive victory over Atlanta. Now we're getting into the I would say this next stretch of games where you have a bunch of close ones. The following year you have the Rams and the Titans. The Titans only coming up 1 yard short. It doesn't get much competitive than that. Check. Ravens Giants, not a check. Blowout. 34-7. You have New England Rams, check. Tampa Bay Raiders, no check. New England Carolina, great game, overshadowed by Justin Timberlake, check. New England Philly, check. Pittsburgh Seattle, Indy Bears, Then you have Giants, the upset over the undefeated Patriots, check. Pittsburgh, Arizona, epic battle. Santonio Holmes catch near the sideline in the end zone, check. New Orleans, Indy, you had the late interception that propelled New Orleans, check for me. Green Bay, Pittsburgh, close one, check. Giants, Patriots, another great battle, check. You have the Ravens 49ers, 34-31 in favor of Baltimore, check. Absolute shellacking here, very unexpected, and for me, one of the worst ones ever. Seattle-Denver, 43-8. Absolutely no comparison to this Super Bowl in terms of drama and interest, in my opinion. The next year, New England-Seattle, 28-14. This was the 1-yard line interception from Malcolm Butler. This was an epic game. Check. And the Denver-Carolina game, in my opinion, close, really, until the fourth quarter. Carolina, the Cam Newton fumble, in my opinion, this was competitive. I gave it a check. And then you have the last two, the last two before this one, New England and Atlanta, check. Philly and New England, check. So, in my opinion, when examining the history of the Super Bowls, each one by one, as I just did, you come to the conclusion, really, that the vast majority of these games of late have been close, but in the grand scheme of things, from a historic standpoint, not so much. So I think in my mind, all this talk about it being the worst Super Bowl ever really does not make any sense. The scoring really is the absolutely only reason why anyone can even think of a negative really in this game, was just because of the scoring. You compare all the blowouts that I mentioned, and you think about the last 20 years, in my opinion, a great string of close games. By my estimation, since that Denver-Atlanta game, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and counting this year, 15 close games since that 98 game between Denver and Atlanta. So we're talking about 15 of the last 20 years of close competitive games. So in my opinion, this game, when really putting it in the proper perspective, definitely not one of the worst Super Bowls ever. Definitely a good one, but for me, it's a product of being spoiled over the past 20 years or so. It's a product of Brady winning his 6th time, and maybe for some of the fans watching, you had kind of a here we go again, New England's going to close it out kind of attitude, but really placed on the proper perspective, this game, far from being a bad one, in my opinion, a competitive defensive struggle. I almost called it Special Teams Sunday. A great game, in my opinion, definitely worth a watch. Now, for me, coming up, a signing day story you won't want to miss. It's my story. So before you youngins commit to a program and sign, here is my unique story. So here we go. Alright, so from where I began, I was at Bishop Kenny High School, a senior. This was 2014, early 2014, and I get up in the morning. My brother had a club meeting in that morning, so for me, I get up around 5 o'clock that morning. So I'm waiting in the hallway, really doing nothing until my first class starts. I get through the day a little bit. I remember having gym class that day. I remember going back to the facility, the gym, for a pep rally. Now, at the time, I was the senior class president, and I remember I had my Ave Maria shirt at the time. I had committed to them and was about to sign for them, and they had a neat little presentation where every athlete that day that was going to go to the next level had their gear and shirt on, etc. And so we get through the pep rally there, and then at the end, I'm the senior class president, and I give a pep rally speech, if you will. And then during the speech, it was freaking wild. And I remember leaving there, and I'm like, wow, I'm about to sign my letter of intent. So we get there. I'm signing with a quarterback and John Wolford, who had committed to Wake Forest, ended up having a great career there, and my good buddy, who ended up being the first roommate I had in college, Devin Seff. He's a linebacker who also committed to Ave Maria and signed. So we have the sheet of paper. I sign it. I get to see a lot of family and friends, but really my day is not even close to over. And when I tell you this, I'm talking about a 28-hour saga that will ensue. Alright, so at this point, I'm at the middle of the day. I'm about to leave school after the signing, take a couple pictures, etc. And they have the basketball game that night against Baker County. This was the chief rival that we had at the time, and it was in the district tournament. So I go back to the house because there's a little time to spare, not much going on, and then me and my dad drive up there. Now, for those that don't know, from my house to Baker County is about a 45-minute drive. And so we get there, and by the time we get there, everyone's basically leaving the facility. I find out that the team had won, and that really we had driven all that way, really without hardly any recollection of what happened. Didn't watch any of it really because they were all leaving, and so I went all that way just for that. I drive home, which is another 45 minutes, and so following this, me and my dad in the car for a medical procedure the following morning. I had to stay up the rest of the night until that appointment. So with that in mind, we were discussing our plans for the day, and then while we're driving in the car. So it's later that night at this point, and we're thinking, how about we watch a movie? So we end up going to Lone Survivor, which at the time was a new movie. And if you haven't seen it, a great film. This is a story about 4 SEAL team members there in Afghanistan. An epic story about how they survived and what have you. Or not all of them survived, but anyway, I don't want to spoil it. But anyway, so we get into the movie theater, and it's late at night, and there is absolutely no one in there but us. So for the first time in my life that I can recall, I'm in there with my dad, just us, watching this movie. And it takes a while. It's, not a terribly long movie, but definitely not a short one either. We get out of there, and our first thought is, what are the places that are open this late at night? We're fast forwarding. This is probably 1:30 in the morning we're talking about. So we go over to the local Denny's late at night, and I get a burger. And in the meantime, my dad, we're talking about stuff, and he goes, well, you got to stay up for a while, so we'll watch another movie at home in a bit. So I'm looking through, I've got my phone on, and I'm looking through maybe a movie that I haven't seen that's one of those have to watch before you die, hadn't seen it yet kind of things. So I'm scrolling, and we eventually decide on The Godfather, the first one. We get back home after the meal, and very late. We go outside, and I decide to my dad suggests taking a long walk. He says, well, you got to stay up, so taking this walk will keep you up. So we walk around the neighborhood, just kind of talking. We end up looping back very late at this point, and we end up going outside and utilizing our putting green in the backyard. It's a artificial green in the back, several holes, and because of the darkness, we turn the lights on outside, prime time putting contest, and we do this for the next we're out there for probably a half hour, maybe an hour or so. We get in after this session, this unique primetime experience. We go inside, and we end up turning on the movie, The Godfather, and at this point I am really struggling, and I'm on the couch, I'm fighting it, and eventually my dad's like, well, you got to get up and walk around to keep your blood flowing. So I'm getting up. Eventually I do some push-ups, get up again, walking, and then I lay on the couch, still watching the movie. And when they get through it, if you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend it. When they get through it to about the scene where, not much of a spoiler, the Michael Corleone character is, in Italy, and he's, in love or whatever. I find myself on the couch, and my eyes are, oh man, I am struggling. So I keep getting up, and then the movie keeps rolling, and I have no idea how I stay awake. We're talking the wee hours in the morning. This movie is a few hours long, and I'm sleeping, or I'm not sleeping, but I'm doing every single thing I can not to sleep. By the time I'm still awake, we're at about 6 o'clock in the morning the next day. My brother comes down, and he's like, Big B! And I'm on the couch, freaking don't even feel like my normal self. I feel like a freaking zombie. And I'm like, and I'm struggling to freaking talk, and he's like, Big B, what's the matter with you? And I get up, and Mom's like, he's been up all night. And so then I get up for breakfast, and we got waffles that morning, and I'm about to freaking fall my face over the thing, and then when I fall over, I dip, and I'm freaking struggling to eat. And then I finally move over. It's time to drive to the facility to get my medical procedure done. And in the car, I'm basically hoping and praying we get there, because I am in the car sitting up, but I feel completely out of it. And when I mean out of it, I was freaking exhausted beyond all measure at this point. At this point, we're going past the 24-hour stage. Actually, well beyond. We're about 26 now. And I'm in the car, and then we get out of the car, a little bit of a walk, but it really doesn't wake me up. My balance is off. Then we walk to the front desk, and I'm filling out paperwork, but I'm struggling to. And I'm at the desk, and I'm like falling over on the top, and I'm like trying to stay awake, and my desk is just a little bit longer, and then I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, oh, man, and then I'm struggling to walk over, and then I finally get to the part where I'm about to do the procedure, and I'm about to lay down, and I remember them asking me, they're like, what's your birthday? And I say it in a very, difficult state of mind. And then the last thing I remember them asking me before I absolutely crashed, they asked me who the president was. And I was like, this is how I remember it best, but I was hardly in a normal human state. And I was like, Barack Obama. And I freaking crashed. And I freaking went down, and I was gone. Gone from the world of existence for the next however long. And then I remember getting up. Then by the time I get home, I'm still tired when I wake up, by the way. And I get home, and when I crash again, I slept for a solid 15 hours. No lie. And that, my friends, was my signing day in a nutshell. Folks, if you come anywhere near that, please let me know. Because in my opinion, that was an epic day, if I can remember it. Folks, you have a good one. Take it easy. And thank you for listening. This was the Bryant Rose Show. Have a good one. God bless.